All right, good morning. Hello. I am Jessica Waite, the president of Very Good Food. Our podcast, Growing a Food Movement, is a forum for discussion about building a more resilient local food system. The COVID pandemic has emphasized the need for this resilience and has challenged many of us with the opportunity to create new systems and strategies. We have also seen an outpouring of support for our local businesses and our local heroes. This podcast Zoom series, The Bright Side, will highlight stories of growth and innovation as we discuss how to use these lessons to create momentum towards a healthier future. And today I have Jessica Bell with me. And I would say, are you CEO and co-founder of reVessel?
Correct.
Okay, well, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. What an honor.
I have to say that usually I ask about titles, and I just realized I didn't because you and I know each other so well. And I'm like, it's Jess. I have her. And I didn't even think, how would you like to be formally addressed? But
you can call me janitor. You can call me bathroom cleaner. You can call me anything you want. It really, as a startup, we do it all. We wear many hats.
Isn't that the truth about small business? They're like, are you the owner? And I'm like, well, and the busser and the hostess.
Mm-hmm.
So what can you tell us about your business, about reVessel?
Well, reVessel was founded in 2018. It's a purpose-driven company to inspire ways to use food as a force for good. And as an organization, we design stainless steel reusable food storage containers, but we really use those containers to carry a message, and that is a message of environmental and human health. When we first launched, we had a vision for making it easier to live a clean and green life. I think those are kind of catchy terms that we've heard for so long. But really, as I discovered on my journey from illness to health, that it was much more challenging than I think anyone realizes. So we wanted to be the solution to remove a lot of those obstacles for people to align with values, to realize optimal health, and look at it from a systemic standpoint as to what is the root cause of these issues and how can we go upstream to solve some of those problems for people.
Well, and what really got you started on this journey? What was the impetus or catalyst for this?
Yeah, well, it was definitely not a childhood dream to grow up and start a food storage container business. It was a moment in my life where I didn't recognize the person in the mirror. It was, growing up, always looking at myself as an optimal performance. I was a high-level athlete, and after a series of events, through, if I can go back to even my childhood, I had a bone crumble when I was doing gymnastics. After 6 years of training, 40 hours a week in the gym, just a bone crumbled, unexplainable, other than I just have this dead bone now, and I ended up competing on it for a year and a half. Without a true diagnosis of your bone is broken and it's dead. And so if I put the pieces together and kind of fast forward to after my second son was born, and I started to experience a lot of gut symptoms, a lot of things that I didn't even know how to kind of how to unpack everything. I entered into a new phase of life where I, have a mother-in-law who was diagnosed with ALS, and her diagnosis rocked my world. It really did. I wanted to take on a lot of the burden that I knew my husband would be feeling. And so after 2 months of kind of processing and really absorbing a lot of the pain of her diagnosis, I started to experience a lot of the same symptoms that she had experienced. So a decline in health, neurological symptoms, chronic pain. So it was a systemic inflammatory event that was taking place in my body. And I'd never heard of autoimmunity. I didn't know even what to make of it. So we lost Eddie's mother-in-law. Eddie's my husband and co-founder of reVessel. we lost her about 10 months after her diagnosis, and my symptoms continued to worsen. And it was just unexplainable. Conventional medicine did not serve me well. It was, just try this medicine, just try this. And I would have been on probably 10 different medications. But I realized that there was something that I needed to do different and a different path for myself. So I chose to look at food as a way to create conditions in my life that would eliminate some of the bad. So using food as a detoxifier, using food as a way forward to to really heal. And I'm shortening that, but it was a journey of about 18 months to really seeing some real change. But what I like to say is that regaining health is a lot easier than staying sick and living in that compromised state and that vulnerable state. So, having a diagnosis and being told that your condition is incurable, I think a lot of people feel really overwhelmed, and it was an overwhelming place to be. But deep down inside of me, I knew that that wasn't the way we were created. That wasn't the way that our human biology works. And there was a much bigger thing that I needed to accomplish through this healing journey. So when I, even before I received the feedback from my physician saying the blood markers and the biomarkers are not there anymore, your autoimmune disease is in remission, I already knew that healing had already taken place. And so we wanted to take a look at, after realizing that there are more and more people that are experiencing a lot of these same things, when you talk about it, you start to realize, wow, we have a population that is by and large very sick, with 6 out of 10 adults and likely more than that suffering from at least one chronic disease, and then a portion of that population suffering from multiple. And then going down to our children, how quickly children are becoming sick because of the systems that we have in place for food, for environmental policy and environmental health. So when we created reVessel, it was really there's no compromise on one or the other. It's got to be both. It's got to be addressing the impact to health and an impact to the environment.
That's incredible. It's interesting. I've been thinking a lot about, as this concept of food being powerful, and food as power, and food as empowerment, especially when we look at areas of people that have less access to healthy food, and people in their life who might not even have the knowledge that food can heal them. Just to go really, really simple for a moment, when you say that you were able to heal yourself with food, what did that food journey look like? What kind of food was that?
Yeah, it was, I wasn't necessarily indoctrinated with one sort of method. I was a case study for myself. I was try this, try that. It was really taking out a lot of the inflammatory foods, obviously, looking at the methods in which food was grown. So I sort of labeled myself as a nutrient chaser. So it wasn't like strictly vegan or strictly paleo. It was really, where can I get those nutrients that my body is missing, so that I'm not dependent on supplements or bridges for gaps that might be in existence. So it was looking for what is most bioavailable. How can I prepare that food in the most optimal way so that my body can realize those nutrients? So it was, it brought me back to a very plant-forward diet, and it didn't eliminate, animal products altogether, but it certainly went from, animal products multiple times a week to maybe something once or twice a week. And then just looking at how could I learn to prepare that food on my own. So I didn't grow up with, a grandma that prepared elaborate meals, or a mom. We grew up in a time when food was convenient. And that's when it was really taking hold in communities and really becoming, oh, don't worry about, cooking tonight. We've got this for you. Just swing through our drive-through or pick up the takeout and you're good to go. Now you can do more. So I look at that as kind of a shameful time. Like, how dare you start to infiltrate families and take that away. So the tradition of sitting around the table, reconnecting after a disjointed day has become a big factor in my life and something that I want to facilitate and empower in other people's lives.
That's awesome. And then, you mentioned earlier some of the obstacles you started realizing toward a clean and green lifestyle. And then also I see reVessel, your product, as a solution for those obstacles. And then also for this idea that you can have a healthy prepared meal. You really see that as the intention behind this product that has different components and allows you to cook in the product. What was your, when you were designing this, were you really thinking about the environmental solution as well as the solution to creating these well-rounded, nutritious meals? And how do you use that product to do that?
Yeah, well, there was certainly a hierarchy of values that was really unshakable in building the product. So if ever we deviated from, it has to be able to convert into a different layout, so that if somebody does want to pack a big salad, they can remove all the other containers and drop in that big salad. Or if somebody does want to carry a wrap, it needs to be able to convert so that a wrap would be able to fit in there. So this is very much so when we go to the product, our flagship product is called the Adventure Kit. And it's very much oriented toward an adult, the larger portions. These obstacles that I faced, I was carrying, clunky glass. I didn't want to put my food in contact with plastic. So, that was a foundational element, that no food can come into contact with plastic. When you think about challenges, I've heard from numerous people, oh, I had a spill in my backpack today, or I had, food leak onto me and it ruined my outfit, or whatever. So that was another fundamental thing, that it really is kind of hard to find a leak-proof container. So leak-proofing became really, really important, so that, somebody could have a salad but keep the sauce separate, or have carrots and hummus but not have to combine them all at one time, but be able to experience food in the way that it was intended without compromise. So that it was like, oh, I'm having the same experience as I would in my home, but I'm having it in nature. I'm having it out on a hike, or I'm having it out on the beach. So the challenges went back to, okay, I don't want my food in plastic. So what's the other option? Well, it's wrap it in aluminum foil or put it in glass. And when you live a life of adventure, you go, well, I can't have glass at the beach. I can't have glass at a pool or a campground or a playground or a school or any of these places. So what's next? So what is the intelligent material to use that will endure, that won't become obsolete, and can allow you to have that cross-functional or that multi-use aspect to it. So being able to store food in it while you can then turn around and bake in it the next day, or throw it in the freezer and then pull it right back out and put it on a camp stove. And just that versatility that, the thought is the work, right? If when we pause and put a thought into it and go, we don't want another product that's going to require you to buy 3 other things so that you can do those 3 other things. We want that one product to conceptualize the whole experience of even shopping, bulk shopping, and putting food in a container and then bringing it home, and then being able to prep it, and then be able to put it in the oven, and then, go through that kind of end-to-end experience, and then carry it, out to that destination.
Yeah, and I love that. I just feel like it makes it so easy to eat the way we want to eat. I noticed that with my Adventure Kit, because I get to put all my things in different ways, and I also get to kind of do that whole, I loved your nutrient chase, but the idea that I can make sure I have, all of the different kinds of nutrients and representation from all different veggies or whatever it is I'm eating for the day in that product. And I'm not just here to sell reVessel. I just really think it's great. So, but anyway, I've been watching your journey for, I don't know how long now, a year or so, and And I know you were on a great trajectory. And I think a lot of us had a huge amount of momentum behind our business and our advocacy, everything else we were doing. And then February, January, whenever it was that the COVID pandemic started to come onto our radar, what were you doing around that time, and what did that look like for you?
Well, we were certainly excited. We had a lot of recent events that just was fueling the excitement of 2020. And I think that the place and the space that I'm in right now is recognizing that the journey is not linear. It's not always according to plan, and sometimes the plan B is still not enough, and there's stuff that you can't even predict. So we had just come off of a really fantastic Kickstarter campaign. We had invested a lot personally into our company to get the adventure kit off the ground. We had invested a lot in developing relationships with allies so that we could be that social impact organization that we have always intended to be, to give back to regenerative organic agriculture and ocean conservation, kind of where food is grown, and improve our food system and improve the way that soil can capture carbon, and really be that voice for a stakeholder organization. And then the ocean plastics, where food packaging ends up, and start to look at some of the ways that we can assist in building back a planet that's healthy. So, come January, we do have a global supply chain. And so when the pandemic first was brought to our attention, it was in January. And if our listeners aren't aware, overseas in many Asian countries, they celebrate Lunar New Year. So we had been preparing for all of the kind of slowdowns and stopping of our supply chain for Lunar New Year, which is in some cases a 2 to 3 week process. But what happened was Lunar New Year then turned into the pandemic. So we sort of, everything stopped right then. And we didn't have contact with our suppliers for upwards of 50 to 60 days. They had kind of gone on this pilgrimage, and everybody's traveling, and everybody kind of wasn't back anywhere near the office for a long period of time. So our Kickstarter campaign is very much integrated into what we do on a regular basis, but it is still a very separate part of our business, in that we have one part of our business that was dependent on sales and growth in order for everything to kind of work together and work perfectly. And one thing that we've added to our threats to our business and that sort of thing is, oh, by the way, a pandemic may hit and stop everything. So it's somewhat laughable that it has to go on our, on our SWOT analysis, if you will, but it's like, put it on there, because you just never know. So it's really been a road to recovery. It's, when a tsunami hits, or when an asteroid hits, or when anything hits, there's a damage that's done. And we're not immune to that. And so where we've come from is, well, what can we do to respond? What can we do to address the expectation or the forecasting of sales that would have been in-person events and conferences and trade shows that didn't end up happening? And how do we think creatively, expand our minds to go, well, how do we now solve challenges for individuals in this time? So these last 5 months have sped by, and it's like, have we accomplished anything? But really, it's been an adjustment. It's been a reaching out and trying to assess how do we recover financially from this? How do we continue to ensure we're relevant? And I think that everything is even more relevant, but it's just a matter of getting those supply chains back up and running. The other great thing that I wanted to, and this is a Bright Side podcast, there's always a silver lining if you're willing to receive it. So being able to look at, wow, this has really accelerated some of the things that we probably needed to do 6 months from now when we got our feet back on the ground. But no, that this needs to be done now. So it put our business under a microscope. Every aspect of our business has been, looked at, and making, using this time as a way to build a more viable, a more structurally sound and an integrated business, making sure that we're sticking to our core values. Those are all the things that have really come out of the pandemic. So we're really excited about the next 6 months. There's been a lot of promising changes that have happening, no less hard and a lot of work, but change is good and change is needed. And we couldn't have asked for a better way to get the world looking at how we treat humans, how we treat our planet, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do feel like this was such an incredible opportunity to pause and look at your business values and your model and everything like that, because so many of us were just on this, like, I don't know, fast track, or it's this constant pace of creating and building. And so to have to come to a halt and pause and look at your operations and try to understand what we could be doing better, it was almost a gift. I mean, it was a gift to have that opportunity for me personally as a business owner, and a lot of people I've talked to, I think, because we don't pause very often.
But
And
it's
then
come
in the
with pain, and we
yeah,
can't ignore that. There's been pain
exactly.
and suffering.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Oh, no, and that's not something that I want to overlook at all. I think that just being honest about the fact that there has been a lot of challenge and a lot of struggle, and we're all very, very tired. But at the same time, there's been an
is it
opportunity for
showing?
growth. Oh God, I can't even. Over the course of this podcast, people are probably gonna be like, "Wow, she needs to take a sleep or something." But regardless, like, we're doing what we believe in, and I think that's kind of a huge part of this is like having that moment to reflect on what we really do believe in and how we want to move forward. And one of the things that I love about you is your knowledge and passion about reusables and about transitioning away from disposable plastics. And I think one thing that really stood out, excuse me, through this whole process was just that there's like this overwhelming urge from everyone to like plasticize everything and sanitize everything, and it seemed like we kind of took a step back as far as the regenerative and reusable movement was concerned. And do you have any insights about that, about how we can go from where we are now, which is almost like everything is, everybody wants to plastic, I keep saying plasticize, is that a word? Plasticize everything, and how we can really get back to a place where we feel comfortable and safe using disposables or reusables. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I do have some insights, but just to simplify it, I think it's a very much a fear-based reaction.
Yeah.
It's oh my gosh, how do I not get that scary thing, and who do I trust? So in kind of being in that state of fear, we've seen a lot of advantageous moves by industry that is saying, oh, okay, if I just, plant this seed and suggest that everything else that is environmentally sound is bad, and it poses additional risks, then I can actually, advance my business and advance this industry. So recent news that just came out, and I'm happy to share that over 125 health experts from various disciplines, from virology to epidemiology to biology to, I mean, you name it, over 19 countries have come together with a consensus saying not only do we believe that reusables are just as safe as this disposable counterpart. Obviously, reusables are much easier to clean and sanitize because you're likely not sanitizing any plastic single-use items or putting in that effort. It's just very challenging to do, but it's imperative to the health of our planet, which is inextricably linked to the health of our humans. When our waterways are contaminated and our fish are contaminated with endocrine disrupting chemicals and dying, and showing up on beaches because they have, a litany of plastic materials, we cannot continue to disassociate that from how it affects humans. So, you know, this is an opportunity. And so that new information, so what we've been doing is just pausing, you know, not trying to shove more confusing information down people's throats, but trying to gather that information, find that firm foundation to stand on. And then when folks are kind of coming up and waking up to, wait a second, this is actually causing a lot of harm, then we have some solutions in place. So as you're very much aware, we saw this as a very opportune time to start looking at what does a reusable model look like beyond just consumers in their households, but how does an individual go throughout their day? As many people, the average of, you know, eating out is 4.2 times per week per American, you know, on average. So if somebody's eating out 4.2 times, they're not getting the food from their home. So they're then dependent on plastic. And again, you're probably a better voice for this, but you know, restaurants facing 100% disposables over the last couple of months, we saw that as a, you know, from an empath's perspective, like, oh my gosh, I know what that means. That means higher costs. That means a contradiction to their values. That means a lot of things. So how can we, with the solutions that we have, be a support? So we're looking at launching during the month of July a pilot here in San Diego to bring meals that are being donated already. So food that is being delivered to vulnerable communities, to frontline healthcare and other workers, and bring them food, but without the contamination from plastics, without the contamination to you know, to the planet. So less than 9% of plastics that are created have ever been recycled, and that's such a, you know, such a shocker for me, and to even hear that again and again and again. But that's not what people are led to believe, right? You see that if you look at the bottom of the bottle and it has that triangle on it, you assume that it's recyclable. And that's just an identifier of the type of plastic that it actually is. So we drop it in the recycle bin. We're like, yay, pat on the back. We did our part, and I'm not creating waste. Well, 91% of those are either going to landfills, incinerators, or into our waterways and oceans. So we have to do better in terms of source reduction, in terms of how does each household go from, I think San Diego, it's like the average person throws away 5.5 pounds of trash. How do we look at that? And so within our own house, you know, we've looked at food scraps. We've looked at, okay, nope, that can be reused, or nope, that doesn't come into our house, or no, we carry our own bags. And just for this audience, recent changes, Governor Newsom signed an executive order that reinstated a lot of the, you know, kind of preventative and protective measures that are in place due to COVID, but did not suspend the bag ban. So now, you know, in California, we can continue reusing bags and bring them into the grocery store with some additional, you know, measures in place. But that was news, and that was music to my ears, because, you know, during this time, I did not get takeout food, and that was a bit of a struggle, you know, 100% cooking from home. Also going to the grocery store, it would just take me a lot longer, because I'd put the, you know, the loose items in my cart, and then I'd carry those out to my car, and then I'd put them back in my bag there, just to avoid the additional single-use bags, and just to get people's awareness. You know, when you're driving along the side of the road, look what's out there. You know, even my children are like, wow, look at this mess. You know, you go on an entrance to a freeway and you look to the right or you look to the left, and it's baggies, it's food containers, it's, you know, cups and straws, and there's a ton of waste. It's insane. So going back to the pilot,
no, it's awful.
those 300 meals with the partnership from 6 amazing responsible restaurants, including the Plot, including Wrench and Rodent, Sebastopol Pub, and folks that are committed to sort of paving the way for consumers to be able to opt out of disposables. And it's not going to be an easy path. It's going to be one of education, one of stumbles, one of realizing that we don't know it all, but creating a framework for individuals to be able to rely less on natural resources and start to better manage the existing resources that we have.
Awesome. This is why I was so excited to have you on this conversation, not just because I love your energy and I knew you'd have some great insights, but really you have such an incredible wealth of information to share. And I felt like we hadn't even had this conversation and I still have so much to learn from you. Every time I talk to you, I'm like, God, she's so like tapped into all of these different political and social kind of issues. So just having you share this information is so incredibly helpful. And I just feel like I want to bullet point some of those facts for our audience here. And I think sometimes it's difficult to find a bright side in something like a pandemic. I mean, that should be obvious. It's a hugely challenging time and devastating for so many in our communities. Sometimes we learn that the bright side is really realizing that our systems as they were awesome and we should be grateful that we built them. And then sometimes it's bringing light and attention to systems that were really, really broken. And, some of that is our supply chain. And then a lot of that is our reliance on single-use plastics and disposables. And so, to me, that really stands out as even though it's a kind of an uncomfortable thing to look at, it really stands out as a bright kind of insight of this pandemic, if people can really look around and realize that they don't want to be contributing to all of this waste. Are there other kind of insights or aha moments or kind of bright side lessons that you feel like you've taken from this experience that you could share?
Yeah, I think just on a personal level, it's appreciating the simple things and appreciating the little things that we do have. I think, there's a large number of people that can find something beautiful in spending more time with their family. It doesn't mean that there's not challenges in having family around all the time and not having that sacred space of workflow and but yeah, just appreciating that we don't require that much. And as a society of consumers, we consume a lot, and a lot that we don't actually truly need to thrive. And a lot of those things that we're consuming are not creating a thriving, vital environment for ourselves and for our children to grow up in. So, the pause to go, if I eliminate this from my life, or at least see if it's essential, is this going to have a huge impact? So looking at what are we so dependent on? Another thing is just, where do I get my information and how do I form my own opinions? As a culture, we're told that we need more. And just, taking that and putting it through, a filter of, do I actually need this? Is this essential? And, how is this impacting my experience? How is this impacting my, grandchildren's experience? What is that going to look like? So looking at it from a much more systemic standpoint, looking at it from a not so selfish as what do I need to feel convenient and get me to the next thing right now, but how does my action in this moment have a ripple effect and create either positivity and stewardship, or how does it create harm and devastation?
Absolutely. Thank you. I love that we can take this from, and this may or may not happen again in our lifetime, right? We don't know if we'll ever have a global pandemic. We know that if things keep going the way that they are, we will definitely have more kind of instability from environmental factors. But right now, the future, I have it written on the wall of our restaurant, the future is unwritten. And we have so many opportunities to come together, to take what we've learned and to move forward with community and with positivity. And I'm excited for that. And I think you're excited for that. And I love hearing that, because we have so much power to make change. So
we will endure. We will endure.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for this. I am
Amazing.
incredibly grateful to have heard from you today. So,
Oh,
um,
thank you for having me, Jessica.
absolutely. And one more question that I always almost forget to ask is if our audience wants to learn more about you, your efforts, how do they find you?
Sure. Best way is to connect with us on social media at reVessel USA and our website, reVessel.com. There's ways to interact and engage, send us private messages. My email, it can be found on that website. So, and, most of those links will eventually go to us as, as really a small team.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And
Thanks.
it was a pleasure. I'll talk to you
Likewise.
soon. Okay.
Likewise.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.